Welcome to the Unbroken Arrows podcast. I'm Greg. It's been about a month since we last published an Unbroken Arrows podcast, and today I want to share with you why. The title of this podcast is The Next Chapter Has Been Written. Over the past year or so, Catherine and I have talked about our lives being a series of chapters. Since the last podcast, another chapter in our lives has been written. Maasa, Catherine's oldest sister, died on March 12th. Maasa was born with a genetic disease that, with more modern genetic testing, was re-diagnosed a couple of years ago as Mirage syndrome. Maasa's decline in health started around Christmas, and a series of hospitalizations beginning in February left her weaker and more susceptible to sickness with each event. As a result of Mirage syndrome, Maasa's medical history was complicated, with multiple body systems impacted by her disease. It was even more of a concern during treatments because one treatment for one system might harm another system. The decision was made for Maasa to move into hospice care on March 11th. She made the transition into the hospice facility that afternoon. She had a pizza party with her family that evening. She was one happy young woman that night. But less than 18 hours later, she died, surrounded by those she loved and those who loved her. I am joined now by my wife, Maasa's mom, Stephanie. Stephanie, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.
I want to start by talking about Maasa's last months and days. And there were some special memories made and stories that will be shared on this podcast in the future. But specifically today, I'd like to visit with you about the days following Maasa's death. There were a lot of different friends, families that helped out, brought food, brought housing, home goods and those kinds of things, and a tremendous outpouring of support from family and friends. And one of the things that you and I have talked about over the last few weeks is the response of those that came to the visitation and wake to share their support for you, your children, and the entire Spader and Peters family. So one of the things that we've talked about is that you and your family, and I still have to kind of get used to the we part of that because I'm part of this family now too.
A little bit, yeah.
But you learned of so many people that Maasa impacted through work, through walking Sadie in the neighborhood. It's just a testament to you and your kids. But I just wanted to ask you, what were some of those things that you found out over the few days following Maasa's death, and then at the wake, the visitation, some of the things that people came up to you and shared with you that it's actually really special. And some of these you had no idea.
Right.
That.
Well, I'm still in the process of doing thank yous, and there's, just a lot of people that I still don't know who they are, that sent cards and mentioned how Maasa touched their life and how special she was and things like that. So, Maasa lived life without any regrets. She never, one of the things that was actually borderline dangerous was she didn't know a friend from an enemy or a friend from a stranger. I guess that's a better way to put it. Mm-hmm. And it was frightening as her mom to raise her like that, knowing that she couldn't make the distinction because it did put her at risk, mm-hmm. For some pretty scary things. But starting, at the visitation and people from Shields that, she knew because she worked there, the things that they shared with me as they went through the line greeting our family, and then also customers. And that's the one that hit me the most. Mm-hmm. And I actually coined a little phrase since then. Hashtag live like Maasa, because I think that if our society treated complete strangers like she did, we would just be a lot better off. The story that I'm specifically thinking about is a gentleman, older gentleman that I'm assuming is probably retired, and he said that he goes to Shields every day for coffee. And he said, Maasa just always treated me so well. It's not even that big of a deal. I don't know why I'm crying. But he said, I went for coffee and she'd always ask me, do you want 1 or 2 cups? And I'm like, that's hilarious because who drinks 2 cups of coffee at a time? And he'd always say, oh, I just need 1. And she would bring it to his table and just be, really joy-filled, and obviously touched his life, made his days maybe a little bit brighter. And so much so that somebody that I would think is a stranger came to her visitation.
Right.
And I don't think that just any employee that would maybe be nice to somebody that would happen. Like, it seems to me like that's kind of a big deal, know? And so I have, and it just so many different cards that came. One card came from her first grade teacher that she's 25 years old. So first grade was 6, 7 years old, maybe. Mm-hmm. So, is that 18 years ago, if I do my math correctly?
You're the math major, honey.
Right. My bandwidth right now is pretty small, though. But anyway, talking about how Maasa impacted her life as a young teacher and how it continues to impact her life 18 years later. And it's like literally mind-blowing. And I have had an internal check myself, since all of this started, of like, how do I treat people? Because obviously what seems maybe small decisions can impact people really largely,
Random acts of kindness, small acts of kindness that people oftentimes don't think about that are impactful, but those weren't second nature for Maasa.
Right.
Those were first nature. She just did them. She didn't
have a filter, like you and I and most people probably keep ourselves from maybe saying things or doing things that would be considered a really kind gesture because maybe we're embarrassed or we might say the wrong thing, or like, I don't know what inhibits us, but whatever it is, her innocence and her developmental delay and her life experience just allowed her to give it her all every day and not care about what people thought. I don't know that there were many times in Maasa's life that she ever complained about how somebody treated her. And earlier on, like when she was school age and stuff, I remember having lots of conversations with like the special ed department and, as you sit down and have all of your different meetings over the years and things, about how grateful I was that I felt God had protected her heart from the eye rolls, the, being ignored, not invited, being left out. She didn't have a huge group of friends. She had some really special ones throughout the years. But we all know, and you as an educator know, that kids are mean. They can be. Yes. They can be. I mean, that's the stereotype, right? That's obviously kids are really good, but kids can be mean.
Right.
And especially when you have, those developmental delays or those idiosyncrasies or things that make you kind of quote unquote weird,
right.
She never recognized that, which made her that much more capable of loving everyone.
Right. And developing those relationships of people that were just in for coffee.
Right.
That people on her walks with Sadie.
Yeah, that was another one. People came from like during the visitation and gave me a hug, and they're like, well, we're just the neighbor on the other side of the street or behind you or whatever. And I was like, this is literally my worst fear, of Maasa going on these walks and making friends with anybody and everybody. Obviously, God used that to better this world. Thanks be to Jesus. But, as a mom,
it's scary.
It is scary, and what she did. And I mean, I haven't even taken Sadie out for a walk yet since Maasa died. And to be honest, some of it's like, I don't know who's going to stop me.
They're going to recognize Sadie.
They're going to recognize Sadie, and then I'm going to end up crying, in some random neighbor's yard. So,
well, I want to go back to the visitation and the wake and the outpouring of support that so many people showed for all of your family. And at one point in time early on in the wake, which, I mean, there were the visitation, I'm sorry, already people lined up all the way through the facility. And Nate came up to me and said, do you have any idea how many people from Shields are here? Hundreds. And again, I guess I want to say a little bit about just that business, that organization. It was Maasa's goal, and I'm talking her health goal. She wanted to get back to work. And I truly believe that was one of the things that was pushing her to do everything that she could to do that.
For sure.
And I'm sure there are a lot of people that maybe can't wait for retirement. They don't want to work. They don't want to. But that part of Maasa's life was what she was wired for. Those interactions, those interactions with people and those relationships and how supportive Shields was.
I don't really even have words for my gratitude for that place. And it might sound strange for a mom to even be emotional about that, because that was her job. She worked 4 hours a day. It was minimal, right? But it's not her first job. She had 2 other jobs, or actually 3 other jobs before she went to Shields. And, I remember before she got that job of even just talking to her brother and sister that were already working there. Her brother's been full-time there for quite some time. And, would they be okay with her working there? Of course, having a special needs sister has its own challenges. And with her being employed at the same place, could show some, there could be other challenges that came up, and we discussed some of those things. And they were maybe reluctantly agreeable for her to apply there. And you could ask them. I would love to hear their
side of things,
yeah,
their thoughts on
their
that.
experience with this. I mean, I've heard it myself, but just now looking back, there were days that she did some things that were quite frustrating. And we had to put some things in place of her not doing certain things, at work, when she saw them and stuff like that. But I think as adults, we've both had, jobs, and one of my business, I'm an independent consultant with Norwex, and one of the things that they say all the time is we do life together, not just business together. And I have to say that Shields, the company itself, but lots of the employees, epitomizes that.
They live it.
Yeah, that mission or that statement. And the fact that she felt so welcomed, so appreciated, and lit up. She wanted to go to Shields and take her dog when she wasn't even working. She loved that place. And I don't know what it is about, quote unquote, that place that made her feel so good. But with these people that came through the visitation, And I was like, thank you for loving her so well, And their response was, well, we loved her and she loved us and we're going to miss her. Like, she made a difference each and every day. Mm-hmm. And I just hope that at the end of the day, people can say that about my life, Like, it's mind-blowing to me that this kiddo that's small stature, developmentally delayed, had umpteen million health issues, could have that kind of impact on somebody.
In the short amount of time that she was on this earth.
Right.
And she impacted a lot of people. Well, there are a lot of Shields stories that go along with that, and one that is one of my favorites, when AJ and Mackenzie shared that they were expecting, but Maasa had to keep it a secret until...
And like for how many weeks?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah,
December
was it 8 weeks?
Yeah.
That she couldn't tell anybody?
And
she doesn't keep secrets.
Right. And she did, though. She kept this one. And I think Mackenzie and AJ were at an appointment, and AJ texted her while she was at work and said, okay, it's okay now, you can... And I'm pretty sure, as AJ mentioned in his eulogy, 6.8 seconds, the entire Shields organization knew that AJ and Mackenzie were expecting.
And I need to get dates on that, because I don't think that was very many days before she got sick and got hospitalized the first time.
Yeah.
If I'm putting
you're right.
If I'm thinking of all the different things, but anyway. So yeah, that was one of the last Shields stories that we're gonna have
to share.
Yeah.
The support shown through cards and letters and donations made to the Unbroken and Brave Foundation. The total number of those was truly humbling.
Absolutely.
With regard to that. And learning of and hearing the stories of how Maasa, just by starting a conversation, made others feel good, how they looked forward to seeing her or visiting with her at Shields, on her walks, anywhere she went, to be quite honest. I mean, that was, whether it was a doctor's office at a doctor's appointment, whether it was when we went to Verdigris, wherever we went, Maasa didn't meet somebody that she didn't consider, her friend. Part of that in saying thank you to those that made those donations to the Unbroken and Brave Foundation, we do want to carry on her legacy, through the foundation, through those charitable works. And those that might be new or newer to the Unbroken Arrows podcast and want to learn more about Maasa, I would suggest listening to episode 14 from season 1. The first part of that podcast, Catherine and I take a little deeper dive into the story of her family. And then the second part of that, Catherine interviews Maasa. I listened to that this morning. It made me laugh, as Maasa could, and it made me cry.
As Maasa could.
As Maasa could. No doubt that she's going to be missed by those around her, her family and her friends. Again, also, if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about Maasa, I did post her obituary on my Reflections page on their website, and our website is our website is unbrokenarrowspodcast.com. So I just want to say thanks, Stephanie. I mean, this is not, we're a couple of weeks out from this, and there are still things that happen and things that remind us of things that have happened. And I've only been part of your family for a couple of years, and the things that when we first met and we started learning about each other's family and some of the things that you shared about the events of your life and the events of your children's life. You guys have been through a lot. But one of the things that I want to end with is, and this one, folks, be patient for her telling this, but I want you to share the story that occurred. It's been about a week or so ago, and we were sitting in our living room, and all of a sudden you heard a honk honk.
I did. We heard a honk. And so anytime there's a honk, there's also a response by a four-legged furry animal.
Masa's dog, Sadie.
She barks. She's really good at that. And I looked up and I saw pass by the window the paratransit bus, which Mesa rode paratransit for the last quite a few years. Mm-hmm. It's a public transportation system here in Sioux Falls that gives door-to-door rides for people that aren't able to ride public transportation or ride the
typical rapid, or not rapid, but mass transit buses and things at the bus stop.
She would, for her, just developmentally delayed, she couldn't get on a bus and stop at another bus stop and make sure she got to the right place, that kind of thing.
Make transfers and such.
Exactly. So anyway, one of the ways that Mesa weaved her way into people's hearts is through these bus drivers that most of them, I think, are probably retired gentlemen that, are just doing this part-time, to
supplement income.
Yeah, exactly. Or just find something to do, and they get to meet some pretty amazing people. Well, anyway, several of them live in our neighborhood. So on Mesa's walks, she would stop for, and I'm not joking, at times hours, and have conversation with these gentlemen and their families. And one of them lives just 2.5 blocks away from us. Mm-hmm. And at one point, a couple summers ago, he and his wife actually made their way over to our house with Mesa. And they were like, we just wanted to introduce ourselves so that you weren't worried about Mesa stopping and talking to these strange people and, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, thank you. Super appreciative. Well, they also fell in love with Sadie and they helped with Sadie from time to time. And they were just really good people. Again, they loved Mesa well. Anyway, so we're sitting in the living room. We hear this honk. I realize that it's paratransit that drove by. And so I pick up my phone and I text this gentleman that we know that lives very close to us. And I said, did you just drive by in the bus and honk? And his response was, not me, any number of drivers. Mesa's passing.
You can do it.
Has hit hard on all of the drivers that know her. It's our way of saying that we miss her and just wanted to say goodbye to one of our favorite passengers. So as you can imagine, just because I'm repeating it how many weeks later, about a week and a half later, I was a mess and shared it with you, and you were really taken back by that as well. But there again, I shared that with my kids, and my kids told me that he came to the visitation. When he came to the visitation, I knew that he had come, that he told them that when he shared this information that morning at their morning meeting, that he said, I've never seen so many grown men quiet and, torn up, teared up and stuff. And again, it's just this little girl of mine who was a lot of work. She took a lot of time. She demanded a lot of things. Lived life so absolutely large, and loved so easily in that, and yeah, I mean, it's baffling and it's humbling, and it also is just really, really beautiful. So
it was. As I mentioned earlier on, we will have different podcasts from time to time that will include different stories and different memories of Mesa. The time spent at the hospice the morning of her death was a special time for many people, and there were some amazing things that happened there that morning. There were some amazing things that happened the night before at her pizza party.
Yeah.
And we left that pizza party that night to come home, and we're talking about when she's coming home, when she's going to make those strides to be able to come home again. And the next morning, we didn't predict, that wasn't even part of our thought process.
No.
To be called and asked to get there. So, first off, Stephanie, thank you for taking the time. I know it's not easy. It probably won't be easy to talk about this for a long time, but thank you for sharing. I wanted our listeners to know what the next chapter in your life, our lives, how it was written,
where you've been,
where we've been. But Maasa, may perpetual light shine upon you, and may you rest in peace. Amen. If someone you know is thinking about suicide or in need of crisis intervention, call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You have to remember that the world is a better place with you in it. To all our listeners, take some time to get outside and enjoy the outdoors and experience its healing powers. With that, on behalf of Catherine, Stephanie, and me, until next time.